O-Level Biology 5090, Chapter 7, Transport in Flowering Plants. First of all, we will discuss the structure of root hair cell. And students, the root hair cells are present on the roots. They are hair-like, so they are called as root hairs. So if we magnify one cell of the root hair, then you can see the different parts of that root hair cell. Cell wall is there, and then next to cell wall, cell membrane is also present, and then next to cell membrane, cytoplasm is enclosed inside the cell membrane and outside the vacuole. Nucleus is also present to control all the activities, and mitochondria to provide energy for the process of active transport. Water is moved in by the process of osmosis. So its structure is just like the other cells, but root hair cell is called as the special cell because it has to perform many functions, as for example, osmosis, diffusion, and active transport for the process of photosynthesis. Now I would like to move towards the next slide, in which we will discuss the function of root hair cell. And you can see that root hair cells has to perform, first of all, osmosis. And osmosis is a process in which the water molecules move from its higher water potential towards the lower water potential through the semi-permeable membrane. So here in root hair cells, you can see the water is present in the soil and it is in higher water potential. So water enters through these root hair cells into it, and then it has to move towards the other parts of the roots. And it means the water is absorbed by the process of osmosis. The second process which takes place in the root hair cells is active transport. And active transport is that process in which the minerals and ions move against the concentration gradient by using energy. So these processes takes place in the root hair cells, and molecules, they move, and for this purpose, for their movement, energy is required. When the minerals move against the concentration gradient, energy is required. Energy is provided by the mitochondria. And for all these processes, the shape of this root hair cell, which is very long, protruding, and so because in this way, its surface area is increased. It has to perform osmosis, it has to perform active transport and diffusion. So large surface area is required for more absorption. So root hair cells are specially adapted for its function. So in this way, I would like to say root hair cells are very special in plants. Next, in the next slide, we will discuss the pathway of the water from the soil towards the other parts. Already told you in previous slide that water enters by the process of osmosis. In soil, water potential is high. So, the water potential is low inside the root hair cell. So water enters through root hair cells because it is very long. So large surface area is there. So more water is entered into the root hair cells. And at this time, you can see that the cell next to root hair cell has lower water potential as comparison to root hair cell. So again, water will move from root hair cells to the next cell. And then from the epidermis of the root, the water will move towards the cortex of the root. Why? Because at that time, when epidermal cells have higher water potential, so the cortex of the root will have lower water potential, so water will move towards the cortex of the root. Then from cortex of the root, the water will move towards the xylem vessel, as xylem vessel will have lower water potential as comparison to cortex of the root. So water will move from its higher water potential towards the lower water potential, and then it will enter into the xylem vessels. And from xylem vessels, the water will be drawn in the upward direction. So many other forces are participated when the water has to move in the upward direction. So this is the pathway by which water molecules move when they are absorbed through the root hair cells. Then they have to move to the other parts. So when they move towards the other parts, always they will move in that direction where there is lower water potential. So in this way, they move from cell to cell, and then they are reached to the xylem, and from xylem, they are moved in the upward direction. So by the process of transpiration pull, many forces are involved into it, which we will discuss in the next slides. Now, this pathway you can see, which I have discussed with you, I would want to show you with this help of this simple diagram. When the water is in the soil, from the soil it enters into the root hair due to the difference in the water potential. Water potential was high in the soil, then it enters into the root hair cells, and in root hair cells, water potential is high as comparison to root cortex, and from the root cortex has higher water potential, then xylem has lower, so water will enter into the xylem, and from xylem, the water will move in the upward direction to other parts of the plants towards the leaves. Now leaves will have, the lower water potential as comparison to xylem, because water is unidirectional. That is, it moves always from the roots towards the upper parts of the plants. Then in leaves, it will enter into the leaves through stomata by the process of diffusion. And then, it is enter into the different parts of the leaf, and then extra water will be evaporated through the stomatas into the leaves. So it was all about the pathway of water. Now I would like to move towards the next slide, which is, in the previous slide, I had told you that the water moves, extra water moves out of the leaf through stomata by the process of diffusion, and the process by which water is evaporated through aerial parts of the plants, that is called as transpiration, or simply loss of water to the aerial parts of the plant, because the water is used up in the process of photosynthesis. From roots through xylem, the water is reached to the leaves, and in leaves, if photosynthesis is taking place, then after using that water into the photosynthesis, the extra water is evaporated into the air, and that is called as transpiration. Next, how do the water is evaporated? Simply, we will discuss that when water enters into the leaves from the xylem vessel, you can see from xylem vessel, the water is entered into the leaf cells. So evaporation of water molecules from the surface of the mesophyll cells to the space. Water is in higher water potential into the xylem vessels, then it enters into different parts of the leaf and especially into the mesophyll tissues. And mesophyll tissues, the extra spaces are present in which which are used to maximize the surface area for the exchange of gases. And here you can see the water is required. So after using that water, the left of the water, which is, you can say, it has to move out of the stomata. So at that time, the diffusion of that water molecules takes place out of the stomata when there is concentration gradient. That is, water will be in higher concentration over there as comparison to outside. If higher concentration is inside the leaf and lower concentration outside the leaf, so water will move out through stomata. So in this way, water is transpired or water is evaporated through aerial parts of the plants due to the concentration gradient or due to the difference in the water potential. I would like to towards the next slide. During transpiration, when water is moved in the upward direction, many forces are involved into it. So those forces can be cohesion and adhesion. I will discuss these cohesion and adhesion because when water is evaporated through stomatas, a pull is produced. The water, when it evaporates into the air, the cell next to it will have uh, higher water potential as these guard cells. So they will try to pull the water from the next cell in this way, and then the other cell from the cells which are present behind it. So in this way, a pull is created. A pull is created in the downward direction. That is, transpiration pull will be in the downward direction to pull the water in the upward direction. So water will move into the upward direction. Transpiration will be in the downward direction and water will move in the upward direction. Then water moves in the upward direction. So at that time, these forces, which I have told you, cohesion and adhesion, are very important to move it in the upward direction. So first of all, when water has to move in the upward direction, the water molecules are there. And these water molecules, you know, they are joined with one another with partial positive or negative charge on oxygen and hydrogen. So the forces between two water molecules is cohesion. The force between two water molecules is cohesion. So in this way, the other molecules will have the same forces. So when they are joined together, they will attract each other. These water molecules will attract each other. They will adhere with each other. They will interact with each other. So that is called as cohesion. So due to cohesion, they will make up a single column of water molecules in the upward direction. So in this way, these molecules will join together to move in the upward direction. When this column is formed, you can see the water molecules are moving in this way. They are joined with one another with cohesive force. At the same time, these water molecules adhere with the walls. They also adhere with the walls, and that force is called as force of adhesion. So due to this cohesion and adhesion, water level is maintained and water moves in the upward direction. They force each other. They try to uh, keep themselves with each other. So in this way, they move in the upward direction. So water molecules are carried up one way. So in this way, the water molecules are moved in the upward direction in the xylem vessels. So this is the mechanism of movement of water in xylem vessels. In the next slide, I would like to discuss the different factors which affect the rate of transpiration. First of all, temperature. And you can see the transpiration takes place through leaves. So if outside the leaf there is when there is high temperature, so it means outside the leaf, due to high temperature, water will be in lower water potential. So water from leaves will diffuse out into the air. So more transpiration will take place. So in this way, we can say that kinetic energy of the molecules is increased due to high temperature. So more transpiration rate or more process of transpiration takes place, or more water is removed from the aerial parts of the plants. If at low temperature, the opposite of it will take place. Humidity. When there is more humid, when the environment is more humid, less rate of transpiration, because uh, there will be a balance. There will be, or in simple words, I would like to say, equal water potential on both sides, outside the leaf and inside the leaf. So there will be no movement of water molecules into the air or out of the air. In case of less humidity, there can be some movement that water can move outside. If there is high wind, then what is wind? Moving air. So when there is wind, then the transpiration rate will be high, as water will take away the water molecules around the leaf. So there will be low water potential outside. So more water will be evaporated. High light intensity means high temperature. So when there is high light intensity, then there will be high temperature. If high temperature, the more transpiration rate or more transpiration will take place. So one more thing I would like to tell you, that the transpiration helps to keep cool to the plants. So it gives the cooling effect to them. Next is, how do the sucrose move from the source towards the sink? That is, food is manufactured in the leaves. So when food is manufactured, then it has to move towards the other parts of the plant where the food is needed. So this is called as translocation. So translocation of sucrose and amino acids takes place. That is, in leaves, they are in higher concentration, then they have to move towards the other parts. So the movement of food, sucrose or amino acids, takes place through the phloem vessels. They are in higher concentration at the source. Source. What is source? Where it is manufactured, means leaf. And it has to move towards the sink. Sink, where it is needed, where it has to be transported. And those parts can be roots, leaves, stem tubers, etc. Flowers, etc. So in this way, the food has to move from the source towards the sink. When food has to move, at that time, it moves through the phloem vessels. And you know, the phloem vessels uh, have companion cells. Companion cells have nucleus, which helps the phloem cells to move the food from the leaf towards the other parts. When food enters into the phloem, at that time, it is in very high concentration. So at that time, xylem has higher water potential. So water from xylem enters into the phloem to make it dilute food particles. Then in that conditions, they move in the downward direction. So when they move through the sieve tube elements or phloem vessels in the at the place where it has to reach, whether it is root, stems, or leaves, or other parts of the plants where the food is required, it has to be dropped over there. So at that time, well, it reaches over there, then at that time, xylem has lower water potential. So xylem water from phloem moves out. Water enters at that time when food has to be transported towards the sink. So when it is reached at the sink, at that time, the water moved out because of the lower water potential in the xylem, and the food is reached over there. And food will be stored in different forms, in the form of starch. So in this way, I would like to say that sucrose is actively transported out of the sieve tube cells, and water flows by osmosis. And here the water, when it enters, again, higher water potential towards the lower water potential. When it leaves the phloem vessels, again, it will move by the process of osmosis. I would like to move towards the next. Okay. Little. Okay. Next is the location of vascular bundle in the stem. Stem, the vascular bundle, xylem and phloems are there. You can see in stem, they are present in the form of a circle in this way. Shape of these vascular bundles are just like this. And this is epidermis and cortex. This is cortex. Cortex, and they are arranged in the cortex. And you can see if we magnify, that is called as phloem, which is towards the epidermis. Phloem, and this is xylem. And both of they are separated with the help of layer of cambium. Layer of cambium. So the location of vascular bundles in stem is, that is, the phloem is towards the epidermis and xylem is towards the pith, which is center of the stem. So they are separated with the help of layer of cambium. Now, location of vascular bundles in the root. And you can say a very beautiful star-shaped xylem is present in the center. Xylem is in the center, and between the two limbs of this star, phloem is there. You can see these are root hairs which are present on the, because this is the transverse section of the root, and this is the cortex. Piliferous layer, which is the outermost or covers the all sides of this root, phloem and xylem. So this is the location of xylem and phloem in the root. Next, structure and function of xylem we have discussed in, that is, it conducts the water from the soil towards the upper parts of the plants. So, you know, this is its function. One function is that it supports the plant. Plant can withstand in the upper direction, or plant can withstand, or it can bear the high osmotic pressure because of special structure of the xylem. Because it has to transport water when there is high pressure or high osmotic pressure, then the xylem vessel can burst, but it do not happen. Why? Because xylem has lignified walls. Lignified means the wall, in the walls lignin is present, and the process of when the lignin is deposited in the wall, it is called as lignification. So in the xylem vessels are kept empty inside, no nucleus, no cytoplasm. So, but walls has lignin, which is a non-living material, and it helps to the water to move in the upward direction. And here you can see that these are the small xylem vessels, which are smaller in size, and large xylem vessels. But all they are very protected by the lignin. So lignin is deposited in many ways. So lignin is deposited in many ways. In some it is in the form of circular rings. In one, it is in the form of spiral ring, and in the form of pits. And where the pit is there, there is no lignin. So in this way, the lignification takes place in the walls of the xylem, which helps it to protect by bursting due to the high osmotic pressure. So small xylem vessels or large xylem vessels, their function is to conduct the water from the soil towards the upper parts of the plants. So students, it was all about the chapter 7, transport in flowering plants. Please like, subscribe, and share my video, and please subscribe my channel as well. Thanks for watching my video.